Recording in progress.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the December edition of the, it's not Westside, Keeping Up with Tech Club. And I'd like to say that our typical format will be open forum, and then we can go into topics. I wasn't able to pull together any topics for tonight, so I left it all open for the evening. That being said, who'd like to open up the floor with the first question of the evening? Ooh, we're doing good. Jim's being quiet down there. He's always got something. Tim was talking about the RAM shortages and the hardware shortages that are being realized out there in the market right now because of the data centers that are sucking up all the inventory out there, and you and me get stuck in the back row to get the leftovers. Any other comments on buying a machine? Anyone tried to buy a machine? Notice the prices are crazy?
Yeah, they're crazy. There's no two ways about it. I'm not looking to buy one, but I do review a lot of component prices and also machines as news comes up on like reviews that people do and post, and the prices are getting outrageous, and it's not going to get better.
No, it's not going to get better. What can you give me any specific examples of anything you've seen directly? Like you went to go buy.
I was buying for one of my old machines that was having some problems with RAM memory, some 2 memory modules for a laptop. This is DDR3 memory, and I had to pay a good 25 to 30% more for that memory than I would have 6 months ago.
And that would have been through who? Like a regular retailer?
Like, it was.
Or was it eBay?
eBay.
eBay. Even on eBay, the prices have gone up.
And that was fishing for the lowest prices I could find. Some of them wanted even more than that. What I paid, I think, $22 or thereabouts, and most of them wanted $30.
Yeah, what I don't understand in regards to the price costing more, what I don't understand is the fact that you're looking for an older technology.
Don't matter. They're all
but in theory, in conversational theory, the RAM that's being sucked up right now is all the higher end stuff, not the high end, but the higher end.
That's right, DDR5.
Right, not
DDR4 is still being made, and it's costing a lot more, as much as double what it was 6 months ago. And it affects the DDR3 because all the vendors that are selling this stuff are trying to take advantage of these shortages to increase their prices, whether they're justified or not.
I could see that being a case. Drew, have you run into this?
No, I have purchased some products over the holidays, but everything that I bought was on sale recently, so okay. I haven't experienced any price gouging or hiking or anything like that for my stuff I bought.
Well, almost everything that you bought, not everything, but most things that you would buy computer-wise over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, etc., or pre-Black Friday sales were all higher than what they were 6 months ago.
I don't know about everything. Some of the products I've been tracking the prices of, so I know a few of them that I bought were the same price but less. I didn't buy any memory-related items. I did buy some cables and a capture card and some adapters and a hub and switch, things like that. but nothing was, no
Yeah.
computers.
I would agree. Most of that, what you described, would not be as impacted as a computer or the main components of the computer.
Yeah, I am in the market for a presentation laptop that I can just take with me and be able to do presentations because not everything's compatible with Linux and my Chromebook has not enough capacity to really handle a hybrid meeting. So I have been noticing that your typical Dell and Lenovo types of laptops with current chips, some of which have NPUs, some of which don't. Those laptops used to be not very long ago in the $1,000 to $1,200 range. Now they're up to $1,600 to $1,800. And that's just for a decent computer. Mm-hmm. Now, I am insisting on enough storage, so the 1 terabyte SSD does add to it.
Yeah, it's a real shocker or a shame that you can buy a $300 cube, but a laptop costs you, $1,500. If you look at you can get it for $300. You can get a computer with a terabyte of storage, but it's just not going to be portable.
Right.
And it's not going to have the best of processors, but it'll be serviceable.
For a presentation device, that would work.
Yeah.
The only bad part is you don't have a display, so unless you just rely on your HDMI output.
I've seen a few reviews of some, quote, new product machines going on the market that would use SODIMM modules, which only allow 2 modules to be put in the unit. But some of the units are being sold bare bones. You provide your own RAM, or in some cases, they're only coming with 1 module instead of 2.
Yep. And the difference between those cubes, the components, and the laptop is that a laptop has to run off battery.
Yep.
Could you get away with a tablet, Bob?
Not really, not for hybrid meetings.
Okay. So in these meetings that you need to do presentations, you just need it to be, do you need to interact with it or just have it do, okay. Kind of like here where I have to search for something.
Yes, only I'm in a live setting.
Right.
And there are remote participants, but I need to be logged into the session.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my little Chromebook is no longer adequate.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and for Zoom meetings, like it or not, the Windows version of Zoom is more comprehensive than the other platforms.
Yeah, with screen sharing, it does a better job. Under Linux, there are known issues.
Yeah, I already had them.
Been there, done that. Some of those issues I have gotten a little insight on from some of the other user groups that I'm a member of, but nothing that'll actually solve the problem. Anyway, getting back to Windows.
I'd like to know, I'm going to change the subject here. Has anyone purchased anything during the Black Friday sale that they'd like to discuss?
Well, I renewed my Micron Reflect licenses, but that was already going to be a good deal. That's last year's Black Friday. And it continues. And they also are, Micron Reflect was also offering their licenses that are 4 for $100.
Right. And
yeah, I noticed that when I went to buy Macrium this year, last year I got 2 for $100.
Yeah.
This year they offered 4 for $100.
That's right.
But the problem with it is that the off sale price, the renews at price.
Yeah.
Was $200 because that's the price for 4 units.
Not for me. For me, I locked in.
Drew is reporting what he was
Yeah.
seeing on
Okay.
the new offer.
You may have seen this, and this may be their current offering.
Right.
Yeah, it would be a higher renewal rate.
Right. So
and who knows what the next version is going to do.
Drew, do you want to expand on that a little more?
Well, I ended up not buying the upgrade. I decided to stick with the free version, and the thing that was attracting me to the paid version was the ability to do incremental backups versus differential backups.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that I'm just going to do differentials more frequently rather than waiting 5 or 6 days in between. So I'm just going to do differentials on a daily basis instead of incrementals. I purchased a new router for my house a couple of months ago, and I just recently purchased a new 2.5 gigabit switch, because the Ethernet on the new switch, the new router that I have, supports 2.5 gigabit. And the laptop that I use has a built-in Ethernet adapter that it turns out, when I plugged it in, is also 2.5 gigabit. So I purchased a 2.5 gigabit adapter for my cell phone, and with the intent of getting high-speed transfers from the phone to the computer for when I do backups. When I do Wi-Fi, I typically start either an SFTP server or an SMB server on the phone and link to that from the computer and use free file sync to transfer my files. I figured Ethernet would be faster. It took quite a bit of effort to get the 2.5 gigabit adapter to work with the phone, and it doesn't work consistently. I have a 1 gigabit adapter that does work consistently, and I found the transfer rate went from about 15 to 18 to 20 with wireless up to about 45 megabytes per second on the Ethernet. I'm not able to get 100 or 150 or 200 or 300 like I should be able to. The USB interface that I'm using says that it supports up to 5 gigabits. So that should not be the bottleneck. I don't know where I'm getting choked down, but I'm getting choked down somewhere. ChatGPT seems to think that it's the Android phone that's the operating system and the hardware interface and how it transfers data is just not as good as a computer.
Did you rewire the house or your area to accommodate the 2.5 gigahertz?
Well, what I did is my router is in my living room, and I bought a couple of 25-foot Ethernet cables, and I just ran them around the perimeter of the room and over to where my phone and computer are.
Cat 6?
Yes.
Okay.
And even with the phone and the router are plugged into the same 6 gigabit switch, and that's not 6 gigabit switch, 2.5 gigabit switch. The performance went up over Wi-Fi, but not to where it should be. So my next experiment is going to be 2 laptops over 2.5 gigabit and see if that gets better throughput.
Okay. So it shouldn't be that there's anything interfering with it unless you're stepping on other channels or something from a neighbor, but I'm sure you've researched that.
Well, this is I'm not stepping on Wi-Fi channels, but I'm not using Wi-Fi. I'm using Ethernet.
Correct.
I'm just not getting the theoretical limit of what I should be getting. I should be getting, according to ChatGPT, it basically said, "Be happy, camper," because 40 is on, it said based on its knowledge, 40 is in the ballpark for where I should expect my throughput to be. It suggested that if I switched from an encrypted protocol to an unencrypted protocol like regular FTP instead of SFTP, it was blaming the overhead of the encryption not being, the cell phone not being fast enough to do the encryption decryption, that I would probably get 80 megabytes per second if I went to an unencrypted protocol, which I did, and it maybe went up by 5 megabytes per second, but not more than that.
Hmm.
The processor on the phone certainly wasn't the bottleneck. So I'm getting double what I was getting over Wi-Fi, which is better than nothing. But I'm not getting what I could be or should be, I think.
Sounds like this leaves the switches as the switch or switches as the likely bottleneck.
Well, it's a brand new switch that I just opened a couple of days ago. And it only has 2 wires in it, one wire going to the phone and one wire going to the laptop.
Yeah, but exactly how it handles switching could perhaps have something to do with it. And how
Well,
good the isolation is between the various internal wires.
So, Drew, you're running from your, per se, from a laptop to directly to the router, or through a switch
the
into the router?
laptop, the switch is plugged into an open port on the router,
Okay.
and which is a 2.5 gigabit port. And the switch is a brand new 2.5 gigabit switch. And the only two devices plugged into it are the phone and the laptop. And when I do a speed test to the internet on either the phone or the laptop, I'm getting, I pay for, I think, about 800 down, and I get between 600 and 700. So I'm getting my internet speed is what it should be. But my phone to laptop speed is not what I think it should be or could be, but.
And I presume you've done everything you can to optimize how the router is managing traffic.
Well, according to chat, the router isn't part of the equation at this point, because the switch is supposed to be intelligent enough to establish a connection between port 1 and port 2 and transfer the data without going through the router.
Is
Supposed
that
to
how
be.
that works?
Supposed to be.
I say this, I asked the question because I really didn't understand how that worked from a router to a switch to your device. And then Drew's saying that when a request or a transfer is being made in that kind of setup, the switch handles all the load, all the work. The router, the only thing it's doing, I think, is what? Delving out
It's
IP
basically,
addresses?
it's handshaking the connection between the two.
Okay.
But once the data transfer begins and the two know each other's MAC address and IP address and hardware address and all that shit, the data should stay within the switch.
Yeah, generally speaking, the router is a traffic cop at best, okay? And it'll have anywhere between 1 and 4 ports on the back for Ethernet. And I use switches galore, but not at the 2.5 gigahertz level. I only use 1 gigabit switches. And I get 100% on the 1 gigabit unless I plug in one of my older systems that only handles 100, in which case that one port for that one device is at the lower rate, but does not affect the higher rate for all the other higher speed devices.
Right. Right. And one thing that chat told me that I double checked and confirmed it was not the issue is Cat 5. There's a Cat 5 cables, and then there's Cat 5E or 5E something.
Cat 5E and is a minimum.
And some of my cables are old enough to be Cat 5, but not 5E.
You don't
Cat
want
Cat 5 limits maxes out at 100 megabit.
That's correct.
And 5E maxes out at a gigabit.
Right.
So
5E.
that's why I made sure that I bought all new cables
Yeah.
that were Cat 6 cables.
Yes, Cat 5E is the minimum standard for 1 gigabit LAN speed, and then 6 is the more recommended because it has better uh, shielding and performance than the Cat 5E. And then you go
Yeah,
up to 7, which is almost like being in a hospital or higher.
right. Yeah, chat said don't even bother with Cat 7 cables in your house.
Right.
Um, um, but it said that, and I read an article in the news just on the other day that some guy was diagnosing a similar kind of problem in his house, and he discovered that an existence of a Cat 5 cable on the LAN can shut down the throughput
Yes.
of your LAN,
Yes.
and you need to get them off.
Right.
You mean shut down or throttle?
You have
It interferes with the throughput of your all your other cables.
right. It's a bottleneck, basically speaking at it. Be like having a funnel, and so you go from the maximum throughput at the opening that's largest down to the small end of the funnel, and that's what the improper old cable can do to the LAN network.
Yeah, so I just went out and bought 4 brand new cables and replaced all of my old cables with Cat 6 cables.
Right. And that's a first good move for when you're having unexpected lower performance when you're upgrading the speed of your devices.
And so what I discovered overall is that for Wi-Fi, my Wi-Fi 6 and my Wi-Fi 7, my Wi-Fi 6 router was an early Wi-Fi 6. It was not the most recent 6. It was a pandemic 6. I bought it, from Best Buy. I had to accept the package in the parking lot. They wouldn't letting people into the store. Um, and this new one, I just bought with the latest version of Wi-Fi 7, and my Wi-Fi speeds are virtually identical. I got really no substantial benefit between going from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7.
Well, odds are your original 6 was a plain Wi-Fi 6 versus a Wi-Fi 6E model, which would have given you increased performance and not much difference between the 6E and the 7.
Correct. And my 6 router is likely not a 6E. But like I said, when I compare Wi-Fi to Ethernet and Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7, the Wi-Fi and the Ethernet, for as far as going out to the internet to speedtest.net and running an internet speed test, not comparing transfer between devices on my network, which is different. Connections to the internet were virtually identical between Ethernet and Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7. It really didn't matter which way I went. They were all pretty much the same.
Thank you,
So that's my most recent experience with going to a new router with a new Wi-Fi 7 is that if you have Wi-Fi 6 already, if you have Wi-Fi 5, you might want to go to 7. But if you have Wi-Fi 6, don't go through the expense of buying a new router and cables and this, that, and the other just to get from 6 to 7.
How do you know if the router has Wi-Fi? If it says it's Wi-Fi 6, how do you know it's not Wi-Fi 6E?
Well, basically, it depends on when you bought it. I know that I bought mine right after 6 came out. And if you log into the router, then somewhere in the admin console, it should tell you what Wi-Fi you have.
Okay, here's how you can tell. Wi-Fi 6, the old standard, did not have 6 gigahertz. And Wi-Fi
Right.
6E, I'm going to do a presentation to a group about this. Wi-Fi 6E does support 6 gigahertz.
Right.
They both support WPA3, and they both support modems. They're both good with modems that range anywhere from DOCSIS 3.1 up through DOCSIS 4.0. So the main difference with Wi-Fi 7 is the capability of simultaneously using several channels on different bands together. That makes for about a 4 to 6-fold or better improvement in throughput if you have very demanding devices or a very demanding upstream data flow, which is
Right.
not most of us, but it might be you, Drew.
Well, the problem is it's not all of the devices on my LAN, because you have to remember is that when you upgrade the router, you're not upgrading the Wi-Fi adapter in your phone and in your laptop and in your computer. You know, you're only upgrading the Wi-Fi in the router.
Right.
So if you don't have, your network is at the burden of the slowest device that you have.
Exactly. Which is
Um,
why most people don't benefit from Wi-Fi 7.
Right. And
Now,
most of the people that do have the 7 were the gamers, where they try and combine multiple channels together as one broadband connection for their interactive AAA games if they've got also fiber optic.
yeah. The other thing is Wi-Fi 7 does usually require fiber to the home.
Right.
Otherwise, you won't get that kind of throughput, and you'll have another bottleneck.
Right.
But
yeah.
the gamers aren't just doing games; they're also live streaming at the same time, and that is
Right.
one heck of a burden on a network.
Yes. And,
Yes, the live streaming does that.
If you,
Um,
if you are
the
if you live in
Go
an
ahead.
area with the gamers that are heavy doing that broadband combining, they will kill the internet for most of the other people in the area.
And that's something you won't know.
Right.
You
Like
can
most neighborhoods, but there's could be
well,
young adults right next door, down the street. You don't know what they're doing in their house, in their house.
I have
Yeah.
a way of finding out. It's a little utility called Homedale from SZ Corporation. And Homedale is a Wi-Fi, basically a monitor for your Wi-Fi environment, and it tells who's on what frequencies.
Can you demonstrate that?
Let me see if I have it.
Can you do a share screen and let's see what this looks like?
There's something I would have to do. I would have to turn on localization. That may be a bit of an issue since I'm in a limited user account. Let me see what I can do. First, before I share anything, I'm going to see what I can do about localization through. I'm going to see whether I can open. Okay, first of all, let's do that. Then I'm in Shutup 10 and going over to local machine. Restart as admin. So this is going to take a little while. Feel free to discuss something else in the meantime.
Sure.
um,
Hey, Drew,
How
there's
does
a little
all
logo
this compare
in
with
front of you.
Bluetooth?
What is that? I see a little green logo in the middle of your screen.
I'm using a software program called VCam, Virtual Camera,
Okay.
and that's where this fancy background is coming from. I like to use Discord, and I do occasional, 2-3 times a week. I'm doing videos, video chats over Discord, and their background choices are very poor. I typically have to expose the the crap in my house, so I found this program that for free requires this little watermark that you're looking at, and the paid version gets rid of the watermark.
And the name of this program is?
VCAM, VCAM.
BC.
V as in Victor.
Oh, V as in Victor, VCAM. Got it.
Yeah.
And you said that is kind of like doing what the Zoom does, where you can change out the backgrounds, right?
Yeah, yes. You can only the virtual camera is supplying the camera and the background and putting them together for you, so that you don't need an app that has the capability to do that. Zoom doesn't gives you the ability to do backgrounds. Discord does not. So you're stuck without the ability to do virtual backgrounds, but this gives you that ability. I'm just willing to allow all of you guys to look at the logo rather than paying $5 or $10, whatever it is, to the manufacturer.
We that's fine. Free is good. Free is good. Bob, are you tuned up or are you still working?
It's not going to let me do it as limited user.
Okay. Well, it was.
Burt has a question or comment.
Yes, Burt.
I had a question about how all this communication through Wi-Fi compares with doing Bluetooth back to the router.
Oh, Bluetooth is a fraction of the speed.
Yeah.
Bluetooth is like trying to do a road race between a bicycle and a car.
Just about.
Bluetooth will get you. Bluetooth is the bicycle.
Yeah. And it's got a limit of around 33 meters from the transmitter in the device to a receiver. And the speeds are dead slow. It's almost like using a standard USB 3 flash drive compared to SSDs, especially NVMe's, these days. And but you can do a transfer of files from machine A to machine B through Bluetooth. But most of what we use Bluetooth for has low speed requirements, especially like headsets, and we're listening to music. That's very low in transmission rates. So that's not a big deal. It's more the quality that counts. But on top of that, you have also NFC, which is in your smartphones. That is measured in inches and is very, very low rate compared to even Bluetooth.
Now, Burt, your question was about Bluetooth to the router?
It doesn't go to the router.
In other words, I don't use a cable to my computer.
Okay.
I only use Bluetooth.
Well, you're probably not using Bluetooth. You're probably using Wi-Fi.
Yeah, normally you'd be using Wi-Fi for normal communications, especially through the internet. And Bluetooth is like using a pair of kids' walkie-talkies, okay? And it's device to device. Same with NFC, is from one device to another device when you tap it. But it doesn't go through the router, either one of those.
Well, whatever it is, works for me.
It works for you. That's okay. It's included and it's free. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Drew. I appreciate that. And Tom, did you have any questions that you wanted to throw by the group? No, nothing. And I'm waiting for Jim Freeberg to just step on in. He's pretty quiet over there, so he may be.
I've been listening.
You've been listening. Okay, Jim, what kind of questions you got? Quiet.
None, you muted again.
I had a question, but I solved it as I was sitting here.
Oh, well, give us the question anyways. We got to hear it and then come up with the solution.
It's too stupid to deal with.
Oh, come on. We love stupid.
It was my senior moment for today.
Okay. If it wasn't something as simple as like, where's the power switch?
Close.
I deal with senior moments all the time. Like the
Yep.
group here in Sarasota it's all seniors.
It's all seniors. Well, like a lot of us. So we all have
Right.
those senior moments.
Yeah. I especially on Monday, I get hit double hard on Mondays because I have my board meetings, and the board meeting, the Sarasota Technology User Group is for seniors, marketed for seniors. So, I'm pretty much the youngest member of the group. In fact, I'm probably the only member of the group that's under 75. And our president is 92. Um, and so, when I get together for the week for the board meetings that we have, I'm the only one, that's under, 20, I'm at least 20 years younger than the next oldest person.
Okay. I don't have a question, but I sort of have a question. So I got a call from my sister yesterday, and I'm going to show you. Let's see here. Where is it? Share. And who do I want to share?
Share is in the bottom. It's usually like a green
Screen.
up
I'm
arrow.
going to show screen 1.
Yep,
So
there you
are
go.
you seeing
Yes.
Xfinity customer service.
Xfinity customer service? Cool. All right. So my sister has an Xfinity system, and she's been trying to make some of this stuff simpler for her husband, which you may think is backwards, but there's life. Anyway, so she wanted to call Xfinity customer service.
Good luck with
So
that.
she goes on her internet and she looks for Xfinity customer service. And she got this screen. So I'm hoping you can see here it has Xfinity customer service and in great big numbers, 1-800-934, blah, 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 Xfinity. So she called that number. And the person, she said she was trying to figure out some stuff. And the person said, well, I think I can help you with that. Let me get into your account. And apparently she told this person enough. Well, I'm not sure whether she told the person enough to get into the account or not. But anyway, the person who's helping her says, well, I see there are 21 devices on your network. And she says, I don't think so. We've got like 2 telephones and an iPad or something. And the person says, yeah, and some of them, they're going to Pornhub and a bunch of other weird places. And at this point, she's getting my sister a little upset. So she says, well, and my sister says, this sounds like I'm being scammed or hacked or something. And this person says, well, that could be. So let me transfer you to the Federal Trade Commission person. So they transfer her off to this other person who introduces himself and says, I'm Mishu somebody or other, and my badge number is, and he offers to send her a picture of his badge number and all this kind of stuff. And she's getting a little concerned at this point. And then he says, well, I've sent you my badge number. Would you send me a copy of your driver's license? At this point, she gets a little irked and says, I'm beginning to wonder about this. I'm not sure this is all up and up. So she winds up at that point, and before she can hang up or do anything, the line goes down. Okay. So she then finds somewhere else an Xfinity telephone number, calls that Xfinity telephone number, which is different, and gets somebody who appears to really be an Xfinity person. So my question is, And when she talks to that other person, she determines that this phone number is in fact an Xfinity number. So now my question is, what on earth does somebody have to have in order to abscond with phone calls to this Xfinity number?
Well, the first thing I'm looking at right now on your webpage is that you're using Microsoft Bing as your search engine, and that very first entry at the top is a Bing response, and it could be an ad from Xfinity. The first entry that you have, which is below that one, that says Xfinity customer service, contact us, looks more real than the one up on the top.
True.
Not only that, but your sister has an Xfinity bill, and on there should be the phone number for customer service.
Yeah, that's
but
if you do.
To do that,
that's if you
she's
do-
got to go find her Xfinity bill.
Yeah, I don't get paper bills anymore.
Well, yeah, but you can get see the bill online right from Xfinity, or you can get a PDF file sent to you.
But hang on a minute.
But that's a lot of work to do.
Even so, when she talked to the Xfinity person, the Xfinity person said, this phone number is a valid Xfinity phone number.
Yeah.
Well,
Because, I had a customer that I ran into this with, is her login for her Xfinity had a second factor authentication. They wanted to verify who she was. And it was her second factor authentication was her iPhone phone number. And unfortunately, she had recently changed to an Android phone, and she no longer had the email address, her iCloud email address. So she couldn't get in to see her billing account or her PDF files or anything because she wasn't allowed to log in.
It's a possibility that ad, that, as Drew pointed out, is fraudulent. But if you think that's bad, you ought to see what Facebook and some of the other social media sites look like, because they have all kinds of phishing attacks to get you to contact them and get scammed out of your money.
Well, I would go with that if the Xfinity person that she talked, the real Xfinity person she talked to, had said that is not a valid Xfinity number.
Well,
but that person said this 800 number is a valid Xfinity number.
yeah, but the problem is you can't. The scammers are professional con artists. Period. And a con artist separates people from their money, one way or another.
I'm trying to figure out how, when my sister dialed that phone or that number on her phone, so she didn't click on it. She dialed that number from her cell phone,
Right.
and it took her to a scammer.
Even you know what? I
it's
Googled
a valid
that phone
Xfinity number.
I Googled that phone number, and it does come up as a legitimate Xfinity number.
Yeah.
So how she got to a fraudulent account?
Yeah. I just dialed that number on your webpage, and I got on my phone, it displayed the Xfinity logo or name, and it gave me the Xfinity recording. So maybe she just misdialed the time that she dialed it.
That was the thing I was sort of going down that road of, did she fat finger it and somebody had taken whatever mishap she did and had signed up for that telephone number.
That's a possibility too.
Something that I saw when I was doing a quick Google research on this, if you type in 1888 with those phone numbers, you can get to a scammer account.
Aha.
But not 800 number on this one is legit, but the 888 one is not. At least according to Reddit.
So the possibility is when my sister dialed, she actually dialed 888 as opposed to dialing 800.
Yeah, that could be.
That would not surprise me.
Right. That's the only thing I've seen is a legit customer call, and they said it could be scammers or not. Don't know. But that's the possibility.
It's just like websites. Websites that can be set up by anybody for good intention purposes or for conning people out of their money.
But usually the entries that are often at the very, very top of a browser are either AI generated or ads.
Right.
Another way to get to Comcast to Xfinity is on your phone, because you've got an app on your phone that'll take you to customer support.
Only if they've installed the app on their phone.
Yeah.
Let me take this and spin this in just a slightly different direction. I had once been contacted by Xfinity, and they were trying to upsell me into, a better program and blah, blah, blah. And they were telling me how many devices, they were asking me, not telling me, they were asking me, how many devices do you have hooked up to your network? And, I told them, okay, maybe 20 or something like that. Oh, those are big numbers. You've got a complex system there, and you need to upgrade your internet speed because you have 20 devices hooked up to your network. And I'm going, no, IoT devices don't use hardly anything, and I got lots of IoT devices, so I just didn't understand the upsell that they were trying to do, telling me that I needed to upgrade my system or my router or whatever it is, my internet speed, I think it was, because of how many devices are hooked up.
Well, if you had 18 children and they were all on their gaming devices at the same time, I'd agree.
Correct. Okay, new question, new direction?
It's a new direction, I suppose, a
Okay.
program that I'm going to be doing a demonstration of this on Tech for Senior on Monday. I discovered a new program on the internet it was a new application space for me. It was like a new category that no other app occupies that I'm aware of, that you might find interesting. Many of you know about how to create what they call a web app, where you go into your Chrome browser, for example, and you go to a web page, and then you can say that you want to install it as a web app, and it creates a shortcut on your desktop, and then you can open that up into its own private window. You don't see any browser tabs, you don't see any Chrome stuff, all you see is the app. And there's a program, it's called Ferdium, 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 and it's available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. And what it is a web app, and it essentially allows you to, you install Ferdium, and then you create links to Gmail and ChatGPT and Perplexity and Bing and Google and Microsoft, and you can have as many tabs as you want, but it creates a web page, a web app view of the page, as opposed to being in your browser. So it's an app of web apps.
Is this the program?
Yes, that's it.
Ferdium. Okay.
It's open source, free to use, as it says, built by the community, and it works on Windows, Linux, and Mac. And unfortunately, their webpage doesn't do themselves much justice, because when you look at services, you don't necessarily understand what they're referring to. Services are web apps,
Yeah, I can't say this is a very descriptive web page.
Yeah, I don't like their webpage at all, but I now have an app that I can run called Ferdium that has ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Copilot, my Dictanote website, my Discord website, my pCloud drive, all in one place, and it's all running in an app. And if you have multiple computers, like I do, you create a free. You can use the app without creating a free account. But if you create the free account, you can share amongst all your computers the links that you've created, so you don't have to do them over and over again in each computer.
So you use this just to create like shortcut links on your desktop?
Well, you don't need shortcuts on your desktop anymore. You now have a program called Ferdium on your start menu in Windows.
Mm-hmm.
And when you run Ferdium, you instantly have access to the 10 web apps that you created.
Getcha. Thanks, Drew. And you're going to be doing that on Monday?
Yes, I'm preparing a video for Tech for Senior Live on Monday where they're going to show off that video.
Okay.
A demonstration of this program.
And that would be just a footnote to any of our members that feel like participating. Tech for Seniors is through via APCUG. Tim, correct?
They are a member of APCUG, yes.
Right, and we have access to that.
All the
Well,
members
they're free no matter what.
all
Right.
the members on CCS get a copy of the newsletter that comes in Saturday and on Tuesday. But depending on Beata's schedule and that, you might see the Saturday newsletter on Sunday and the Tuesday newsletter on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Drew. Okay,
Yep.
we're ready for our next topic.
A little announcement. I do have some screenshots of what Homedale looks like, and I have their webpage so that even though I can't show it live, I can show what it does.
Okay, screenshots work for us. Please illustrate.
Okay, so Homedale, let me share my screen, and we'll try the application window. No, we'll try the entire screen. Okay, so we've got my screen, more or less. I can probably, there we go. Now, what you're seeing at this point is the homepage for Homedale, sz.com, and it's the sz.com, products, Homedale, and it's got a list of different products on the sidebar. And with Homedale, you can scan anything from Wi-Fi 7 down to the original 802.11a, and you can scan the 2 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and 6 gigahertz frequency bands, and they have various channel bandwidths, which are available these days. And then there are some details about, you can see signal strength and security. Let me see if that's this one or this one. Here we are. You can see the signal strength, and it's color-coded. You have to have location services turned on to use this, and it works best as administrator. And the signal strength over here, and here's a close-up of signal strength, which will show you some details about that. You can switch between all 3 bands, and there are several different selections in the drop-down for different ranges of the 5 gigahertz band because it's rather broad. And 2.4 gigahertz has really broad channels that overlap a lot. By the time you get up to 6 gigahertz, you have very little overlap and very little population. so you don't have a lot of signals. But it will also give overview of your adapter, lots of things about your adapter. You can even find your own location, channel utilization, and that's basically it as far as their illustrations go. So
Yeah,
that's your
now
frequency
that's
usage. And then to connect, you can connect and disconnect from Wi-Fi or LAN access points. And so it can actually connect you or disconnect you. So that's the main idea of Homedale. And it's a free download, free to use. And it will work with just about any Windows from at least Windows 10 upward. And it'll work with almost any Wi-Fi device that can work within the Windows interface.
Homedale Wi-Fi LAN monitor. Now I have a new toy to play with.
Yeah. And anybody else, spread the word. I can also post the URL where you can learn more.
Oh, it works on a Mac too.
Yes. The only place it doesn't work is Linux, but Linux has other tools. And I don't think there's an Android for that, but there's lots of good Wi-Fi analyzer apps for Android.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So as an FYI, I downloaded it and attempted to load it, and it says Windows Defender Smart Screen prevents me from doing this.
It's just not a commonly downloaded program. They don't like it for that reason.
Right. Okay. Got it.
You may override that safely.
Which I just did, and I'm watching this thing populate. Let's do a little screen share on mine. Like you said, hey, we got a new toy to play with.
Yeah. The setting that was stopping me was from O&O Shutup 10. I don't like location services turned on all the time.
So this is going to be lots of numbers, signal strengths.
Yeah. Do you have 6 gigahertz at your place?
Not that I am. No.
In other words, Wi-Fi 6E or 7.
Correct.
Yeah. But you also have to be careful that you can have, because I just bought my router. You can buy, I had to cancel my order and order a different one. You can buy a Wi-Fi 7 router that does not have, it's not a tri-band router. You know, you can buy one that doesn't have 6 gigahertz in it.
Make sure it says tri-band. And the standard for channel sharing ranges from 4x4 to 8x8 for MuMIMO. And that's all caps, MuMIMO.
Boy, do I got a lot of crossover on my network.
Yes. So, that's in the 2.4 gigahertz band. That is to be expected.
Right. I have several access points in my house.
Try the drop-down arrow and see how you are at various places in 5 gigahertz.
And are they stepping on each other?
Oh, most likely.
They are. And by the way, those are your IoT devices. They tend to be on 2.4 gigahertz.
Right.
And it's really pretty much okay. It's okay for them to overlap because they're just doing short bursts out and short bursts in, unless you're doing something like cameras that do more continuous feeds.
Yeah. Which they do. Many these are in place because of my IP cameras, so that the network can pull the signal across the house.
Yeah. And if you're doing cams, you might want to move some of them up into the 5 gigahertz band and see if you get any improvement.
Yeah, a lot of cameras only do 2.4.
Correct.
That's true.
Pretty much, I think all of mine are all 2.4. None of them are on 5.
Well, then you have choices to make.
So
you have a distance issue.
In a long-range house, I have to put them on both ends of the house and in the middle.
5 gigahertz is not going to give you the distance that you need.
No. You would need to use some kind of mesh network. Now, it takes a little while to refresh.
And where's it pulling this info?
from your Wi-Fi card in your computer,
Okay.
your adapter. From mine, it
Yeah,
could also pull from a dongle.
yeah. Sanford, there are apps in the Google Play App Store that will present a graph just like this one on your phone.
Okay.
I bring it to customers' houses all the time, and I'll walk into their house and turn on that app on my phone, and I'll see that their next door neighbor is running their router on the same Wi-Fi band that they are.
Mm-hmm.
I had one customer that had a laser printer, and it had its own built-in Wi-Fi Direct, which is essentially its own router. And she had a new. She was having trouble with her TV in her living room, and her router was right next to the TV, and her laser printer was about 6 feet away, and they were basically stepping on each other. Both of the 5 gigahertz were on the same channels. You know, her printer and her router. And what I discovered is that when we shut the printer off, her problems on her TV went away.
Was that an HP printer?
Yes, it was.
Okay, there it goes. That says a lot right there.
Yeah, but you can learn a lot from some of these apps.
I don't know. I got this app. I don't know what I'm reading here though.
Yeah, you need to do a little bit of research as to what this all means, and in terms of what kind of overlap you've got, and how to identify which devices are doing it. They're almost always likely to be your devices within your house, unless you have next door neighbors who are shooting their Wi-Fi directly at you, which can happen. In my place, it's different because we have apartments. So that's one reason. That's one reason I went up to the 6 gigahertz band. Not much company
I can see my neighbor's Wi-Fi's inside my house.
Yeah. So at 6 gigahertz, there's less. There are fewer people on different channels, and if you do a little more tweaking, you can get onto channels that are less frequently used. But that's not always going to be true.
But I switched over to Wi-Fi 6 to 6 gigahertz, and I don't have any real problems with my 5 gigahertz. So switching to 6 didn't really change anything.
No, for you it won't.
Yeah, in my area, Nat, because Wi-Fi has 330 meter range, and a meter is 39 inches in length. I have a dense area, and I see lots and lots of my neighbors, particularly the one right next door to me, and sometimes in certain circumstances on 2.4, there's collisions, but on 5 gigahertz, I don't seem to have as much interference.
Tom, you're in a multiplex building. Do you have problems with Wi-Fi?
Well, I don't believe so. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're not using a router. You go directly to that one Verizon device, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a T-Mobile.
Similar difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll point this thing at it if you want to see what I'm talking about.
No, I think we've seen it before.
Yeah.
I just didn't remember which you were set up. So you're not set up on a router system, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it seems to work well here. I do have a guy that's right downstairs that if I was having trouble, it would be with what he's got. He's what can I say? An accountant that's always working on his PC, that's always doing a lot of hard work down there and there would be a lot of activity. So I'm happy with what I've got. I'm not getting any kind of trouble on a computer in that way. And I think the only problem I was going to talk to you guys about tonight, you had already answered the very beginning of this thing. And that was, you were talking about all the problems with the latest upgrade to the Windows 11 and how there were some big bugs thrown in. What I can say is that right after I did my most recent upgrade, for some reason, I was not able to play some movies that are in my system. And I was kind of pulling out hairs trying to figure out, well, why not? You know, some of them work and some don't. And it depends on how they're in the system. And, you know, so I was pretty much not too worried about it. I figured there was a bug in the update. I figured that much out myself. And I figured I'd let it go for now. And you guys pretty much answered that question without asking it. Go ahead.
Have you tried an alternative? Are you using an alternative player like VLC?
VLC. Well, I'm using, what is it called? I think VLC is what I'm using.
Yeah, that VLC should do it.
Well, that's the trouble. I've got VLC as the default, and it's the Windows
Media player.
thing.
Media
What's
player.
that?
Media player. That's the Windows default.
Yeah, okay. So the Windows default is what's somehow got a hold of it. Of these particular ones.
You have to go into settings. Apps.
Wait, let me stop you. I've gone into settings and changed everything I can to the proper default. Okay.
Under default, apps default.
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes Microsoft has had a habit of taking settings we, the consumer, make on our systems and undo them. So you have to, every time you're doing updates with Microsoft, you got to go remember as many of these changes that you make to see if Microsoft changed them to what they want.
They did, and I put them back.
Yeah, and
I know
that's a very big problem with Windows.
Yeah, but the whole thing was I put them back the way I had them, and it's still trying on this this handful of things. It's still trying to do the Microsoft starting of the movie,
right?
And that Microsoft function doesn't work.
Right. Well, you with especially 25H2, if you got it on a system and it works, count your blessings, because there are people that are having real problems. But at the same time, too, you bring up another issue regarding like if you're looking at YouTube videos and you're using Firefox. I just came across something a day or two ago that Firefox receives money from Google, and they need it just to keep functioning. Otherwise, Firefox would probably disappear. And so there's been a degradation in playing YouTube videos on Firefox. Somebody's posted a video. I haven't yet played with it myself yet. 3 different settings that can be changed on a Firefox. You do them one at a time and see if that addresses the problem. You don't do them all 3 at one time. And if it works, then you may get normal playback on the Firefox. And I don't know if the forked browsers based upon Firefox are affected by this same issue, because any Chromium based browser, if Chrome and Chromium have a problem, all the other browsers generally have the same problem. Same is true with Firefox. All the sub derivatives of Firefox may have the same problems as well as Firefox itself. But I haven't had time to get into examining that further.
Yeah, I just want to make at least passing mention that in addition to default apps, there are file type associations, and that's still a thing in Windows 11. And the way VLC Player handles this is during installation or upgrading. It allows you to choose which file types are associated with VLC Player. And you can, at least for that moment, make sure that all of your video types are playing through VLC Player by preference.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because when you go into settings, apps, installed programs, you can a lot of times see file associations, and some things were changed to what you wanted, but not everything. And there may be tons of other settings you may want to change as well.
And I'm
Yeah.
guessing you only have a few different file types for your videos. So it's not a big job.
No, it's not a big job. I just have to find the right things to change.
Right. That's
Yeah.
absolute truth. That's where AI might come in handy if you present the problem correctly to the AI. It may get you directly to what you need to change.
Yeah, I'll try it that way because I've done it before without any problem. I did it this time, and what I've got is it is the file type that is changed. It's associated with a particular file type. It recognizes it just fine. When it's in a folder and it's a file type within a folder, it won't do it right. It knows it by what can I say? Windows will grab it and try and work on it.
That's the extra settings in file association with each individual application, like Edge as an example, that may not be set to what you wanted. It defaults to Microsoft, and under the right conditions, it uses the Microsoft setting as the default, not what you intended to have happen. That's where you got to get into deep into the file association settings.
Yeah.
Don't forget, in Windows, File Explorer is an app. File Explorer is an application, but it's not one that you have control over. So you need to do a global setting for those file types that they absolutely everywhere will open with your preferred program. And that may last a couple of weeks.
And then you have to really have good documentation, because if something suddenly stops working the way you set it up, it's probably because Microsoft, during an update or an upgrade, set the settings back to what they want, and
Yeah.
you have to know what to go in and change again, and good notes will help you there.
I understand what you're saying.
And those updates include Microsoft Store updates because the media player is a store app.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
so
actually,
all right, go ahead.
one of the things that I've noticed and been doing myself lately is I saw Windows Media Player Classic constantly fight with VLC or other programs like you're talking about there. Media Player Classic theoretically is an antique. And so what I've done is I've gone into settings, apps, installed programs, found media player, and uninstalled it. That solved my problem.
You can do that.
Well, I mean, if you don't want to use that app and you have no intention of using that app, it's installed on your system. Why not remove it if the system allows you to?
I agree with that.
And you might want to look at some of the other programs that are in there that Microsoft may have put in as defaults that you're not using, you don't intend to use them, etc., and see if you can uninstall a lot of those. That gives you a little bit of real estate on your storage back, and those programs will not interfere with other programs you do want to use.
Yeah. If I knew what I could take out, I would.
It'll tell you, hey, when you go into the three dots on every installed app, you may get advanced settings and you may see uninstall. If you see uninstall, you can uninstall it. If it doesn't show you the uninstall, tough luck. You're stuck with it.
Oh, it's that easy. All right.
Guaranteed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Next question, new direction or another direction shall we go? This is open topics today.
Let's see. I have one more app that I started using recently. Windows doesn't do a great job as in clipboard management. And I'm also a multi-platform user. And so I found a program that's a clipboard manager, basically. And I have my Windows and Linux boxes are now running it by default. And it allows me to save you can change it to whatever value you want. By default, it has a 200 item clipboard. I changed it to 400. But most nicely is it has a tabbed feature, almost like a browser. And when you type in a command, let's say you open up a DOS box and you type in a command and you went out to ChatGPT to find out what to type in the box, you can create a tab called shell commands or DOS commands or PowerShell commands or Linux commands and store them inside this clipboard manager. And then you can export and import so that you have your same tabs on each of your computers. And it enables me to go back and reuse PowerShell commands and Linux commands that I learned how to use but forgot how to use. Each entry is allowed to have a description as well as the actual command. So you can, if you type in a command and you don't remember exactly what it is because it's archaic, you can actually give it a description so that you remember what it is. It's multi-platform, multi-OS, totally free. It's called CopyQ.
CopyQ?
Yes. The word copy and the letter Q.
Okay.
And it is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And I find it to be extremely helpful.
And I can also second that because I have downloaded it and tried it both in Windows and Linux.
Are you able to utilize, like, share between the Linux and the Windows portion?
Well, it has an export and an import feature. It's not going to synchronize them automatically, but you can manually export and import.
The only way to do that would be a cloud sync, and you wouldn't normally be doing that unless you share your OneDrive between Windows and Linux.
So this is the program here, or at least screenshots.
That's
and
what it's like.
As you said, like here, copy Q action dialog, you can give it names. I don't know what it's trying to do here. Give you output, standard output.
Well, it has some advanced features that you may never use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can save stuff as HTML, whatever.
Okay. So for somebody who's an advanced user, this also helps too.
Oh, I know people that are extremely knowledgeable technical people on Linux. And I told them about this. I sent this out to one of my Linux groups. And the sharpest guy in the group came back and said, "Thank you, Drew. This is going to save me a lot of time in my job."
There you go. So it works in Windows and Linux and
Yes.
on a Mac.
Yes.
Command lines, functionality.
And I presume you can give titles to each of the tabs.
Yes, you can.
So this works better than the Windows Snagit or Clipper?
Well. It's not a. It's a. When you reboot Windows, you lose most everything in your clipboard.
Right.
When you reboot Windows and you're using CopyQ, you don't.
Even if you don't give it a title?
Yes. Even if you just have the one clipboard, just the basic default clipboard, it preserves that in its own configuration file so that it's persistent from reboot to reboot.
Thank you, Drew. This looks like a pretty good program. I'll have to give it a test. Oop, I don't need to share that. I need to do.
I have it running on my Windows computers. I use the Windows subsystem for Linux as well as Windows. And I have it installed in Windows and I have it installed in Linux as well. So that when I open up a Linux browser and copy and paste, it copies and pastes it into the proper clipboard manager.
Thank you. New direction?
I have a question.
Yes, Tom.
Okay, I don't know how to say this exactly. I don't try to use cloud itself. However, with T-Mobile and my Android phone, when I'm taking pictures and such, after a short while, it sends things out to cloud, my pictures. Now, how do I go about getting out the cloud and pulling those pictures back into my computer and putting them into memory and then saving them myself?
Well,
So
first of all, what cell phone do you have? Is it Android or iPhone?
It is an Android.
So by default, you may have all of your files going up to Google Photos. Every time you take a picture, it's going to try and upload it to Google Photos. Just like on an iPhone, it's going to try and upload it to iCloud. I have, you can have, if you install the Microsoft OneDrive app on your phone, you can tell it to copy your pictures up to your Microsoft OneDrive rather than using your Google Drive if you'd prefer to do that.
Well, I haven't installed anything special. I've just used
Well, you get Google and you get the Google Photo backup by default.
Okay.
So his question was, how does he get them back? They're there. They're not lost. They're in your Google.
Yeah, they're not gone. If you want to, you can extract them from Google Photos by using a program called Takeout.
Also, you should be able to find the photos in Google Drive on any of your computers. You have to log into the proper Google account that you already have set up with the phone, and then access the G Drive, which is Google Drive, and it gives you a lot of options on the left-hand side and you should be able to find all your photos in one lump sum, and you can mark as many of those photos as you want and download them in a block, so to speak, instead of one at a time.
I would be able to grab them all and pull them back down. Select them all. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can do it that easily because Google Drive and Google Photos are two different spaces in your Google account.
But they all use G Drive, period.
They take up your space, yes, but they are not in G Drive. I can guarantee you that. If you map a drive to Google, and you're in Google Drive, you can see your Google documents and your files, but you will not see your pictures.
You won't see the pictures. They're somewhere else.
They're in Google Photos.
They're in Google Photos, right?
They're in your account. They're taking up space in your account, yes, but they're not taking up Google. They're not in Drive. You can't just drag. If you've taken 20,000 photos over the last 10 years, you can't simply drag and drop those 20,000 photos by logging into Google Drive. There's no way to do it. That's why Google created Takeout.
Explain Takeout.
Takeout is Google's way of extracting photos from Google Drive. You go to I think it's takeout.google.com. It's probably the URL for it. And you can say that you want to extract a certain number of years or a certain number of months or a certain number of days and the maximum zip file size that you want it to bundle them in, and then it will bundle your files for you, your pictures for you, and send you an email with a download link. And you can download 50 gigabytes of pictures all at once if you use Takeout.
So is Takeout an app or just what they
It's a
call
web. It's a web portal at Google.
Okay, because
It's a Google application. It's a Google app in the sense that you log into Google to do it.
Okay. So like we were looking for photos, so I want to come down to photos. I don't think I have photos up here, but mail.
And when you're done doing that, there's something else you can do to directly get to Google Photos in a web browser.
Pinpoint. I don't see photos showing up online. Probably because I don't.
Go closer up to the top.
Top.
Alerts, Android device configuration settings,
Down.
calendar, Canvas, blog, discover.
It's alphabetical.
Right, and photos were in there in P. So, and this could very well be because I should not have any photos up in Google Photos, so it may not be populated.
Yeah, there it is, right there.
Oh, there you're right.
Google Photos.
My bad. Multiple formats. What does that mean?
You can look at that.
Well, you click on it. You probably have all different kinds of photos. Your photos can be video files or picture files.
So Takeout will download all the stuff that's checked.
Yeah.
Unless I uncheck it.
Yeah. Like, for example, if you were departing Google for another land, Google Takeout enables you to save all your shit.
All right, so let's go back and try to find this Google Photos again and see if I could download that and make sure. I don't even know what's in my photos.
There it is.
So I'll choose that, select it.
Be careful, Sanford. It might be a very large file.
I will.
Oh, the default is 2 gigabytes unless you make it bigger.
Yeah.
All right, so now I did that next step.
The next step.
Download link via email. Export once. Let's do it once.
And then scroll down and it's a zip file, and there's the 2 gigabyte limit. You can change that.
So you'll get
It's
fired.
gonna
Okay.
it's gonna take a while to put that together.
Right, and they'll send you an email when it's ready.
Well, one of 70 selected. All right.
All right. And one of 70, meaning I only checked the one box for photos.
Right.
For
So
Google.
that's
'Cause
not
by default,
that's
it
not
had
saying
almost everything selected.
yeah, that's not saying 70 photos. That's saying one of 70 device things that you can export.
Right. And I think I'm hearing ding, ding, ding. I'm wondering if I already got the links.
If you only have a few photos or no photos in that account, then you should get your email from Google pretty quick.
Yeah. I'm looking to see if anything showed up yet. No, nothing has showed up yet. Oh, wait. Google Takeout. There it is. Manage request, finish. You can download the files until December 12th. And I just do to manage. Complete. Oh, this is fine. My file size is less than 1 megabyte.
It should be quick.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm not showing you what I'm going through. I'm just clicking through to see how this is going to work. And it started. Okay. It'd be done. That worked pretty cool.
So that's how you take your shit.
Okay. Now, I could see on emails, wanting to make a backup of your email account might be beneficial, but that could be huge.
Ooh, that's a whole nother topic. I have a program that I downloaded a few months ago. I'm in the process of migrating all of my mail to a new hosted company, and I was looking for programs that would synchronize my email from Google over to my new hosting company. And I came across a program that I don't know the name of it off the top of my head right now, so I haven't used it in a couple of months. But it's an email backup program, and it's totally free, and it supports Microsoft Gmail, it supports Microsoft Hotmail, and all of their stuff, and as well as regular IMAP and other things. And it allows you to do a backup of your all of your mail. It goes through all your folders and grabs everything, and then you have a local copy of it where you can then restore it or search through it or do whatever you want. But it's a backup program for your mail.
yeah, I've recently seen a few situations in which the same kind of a topic came up where people were losing some of their mail on web-based email clients, and they came up with one or more programs that allow this backup to occur that brings them down to your machine, and you do with it as you see fit.
Yeah.
This
You know,
is pretty cool.
I'll get the name of it out of my collection of links and be able to talk about it more during the next meeting that we have. But it's a backup program for mail, basically.
I find this takeout to be pretty interesting. I tried it. I looked at the photo file that it downloaded to me, and there was nothing in it but one entry because I don't use Google Photos. So
You're not supposed to be eating it.
Now, you want to see how to get directly to Google Photos in a web browser?
sure.
Okay. Let me do a share of my screen.
And Tom, did you take notes on how to do this?
Well, I'm still watching what you're doing because I don't even know how to get to the account yet.
Well, you have to do this probably from your PC that you have a Google account already established. and that you're logged into your Google account really helps a lot.
You do have to log into your Google account to do
Right.
any of these things, including if you. I will have to move I will have to move this thing. There it goes. All right. Now I think you can see it a little better. All right. What you want to do is go to photos.google.com and just enter that into the address bar. And this is where you end up. And then you will want to log into your Google Photos. And in any event, once you do get logged into your account, here, visit Google Photos. I'm already logged in, so it took me directly there. I get rid of all their little push ads, and these are all my photos. And I can do whatever I want, download them, maybe even do a little light editing up here.
Yeah, yes, this is good, and it even shows you your years on the right-hand side.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
When you're scrolling.
Look at that.
And if I want to go back to 2018, there's a few of them from 2017 to 2018. These are all local things from around here.
Right.
And this was where I was documenting some flooding and a snowstorm and various other things, including some wallpaper. So that's what hangs out in my account. And what I'm going to do is sign out.
Logging into your Google account to see if you got photos up there.
I haven't tried logging into the account here yet because I'm watching you guys. I do have photos out there because I've got it on the phone.
I was going to say, just open it up in a browser while we're talking. Not on your phone. We're talking about on your PC.
Look in chat. I have the address posted.
Okay. Let's see.
And this way you can verify your photos are there.
But you will have to log into your Google account in order to see anything.
Or unless you're by default already logged in.
You might be logged in if you're using the Chrome or Chromium browser.
I am using a Chrome browser.
You might be logged in, you might not be.
Should I be out in Chrome to do this?
It helps.
I don't think
But you can do it from Firefox, you can do it from Edge.
Right, I was using Firefox.
Yeah, it'll work.
Well, I try not to use either Firefox or Edge, so let me do it from Chrome.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Whichever one you like. And it'll first take you to a page that's full of advertising stuff. And at the very top of that page is how you visit Google Photos.
So in Chrome, I go to, what was it?
Just copy it out of chat.
Google.com/photos, right?
No, it's photos.google.com.
I transposed it.
Photos.google. It's in the chat. It's in the chat.
It is in the chat. Photos.
And all I'm saying is, yeah. What else?
There'll be a login?
Yeah, it will ask for a login. And if you have
already logged in.
If you have two factors, you're going to get a phone message.
Okay. Yeah, Google's photo login is what I'll go into.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you should have a two-factor or multi-factor authentication on any Google account. Period.
They require it.
It does recognize me. I'm happy about that. So
yeah,
it required on new ones that didn't on the old ones.
If it recognizes your device, it may not challenge you.
And if you can find the slot on your monitor where you put the 5-cent coin in, you can get remote support.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys are talking about now. Cut it out.
You can swipe your credit card using Square.
So once Tom gets in, we just want to make sure your photos are there.
I know what you're talking about there. Yeah.
If your photos are in Google Photos, this is where they'll be.
That's right. And then you could use that takeout.google.com to be able to retrieve those photos.
Or you can download them however you like
Correct.
from within the Google Photos.
If
Yes,
you're going to do
you
it
can-
within the Google Photos, you got to do it one at a time, or can you?
No, you can do groups, you can do dates.
Yeah,
Okay, let me
you
ask-
can select
Okay.
a lot of them, but you can't select all of them.
Okay,
Got it.
when I did
Yeah.
this, guys, I typed in the photos.google.com, hit enter, and it's gotten me to my Gmail account
Right.
ID.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
That's
you
it.
need to put in your ID.
My
You need to
the
log
ID
in.
is there. So now it's going to want probably
Yes.
the password. No,
Yes.
I can't want the
Yeah, you want to go ahead and give it to us.
No, don't give it to us, but give it to them.
Yeah, give it to the it says
And while you're
you
at it,
wouldn't
give us
remember the
access to your
password
credit
even
card.
if I gave it to you.
You're not sharing your screen right now. It's okay.
I know that.
We'll just watch your keyboard.
Uh-huh. Do what you want.
Somebody
You
can
won't
listen
believe
to
it.
the
You won't
clicks.
believe what I
Information
type.
through his mouse.
Yeah.
Oh, for crying out loud, you got to put this here first.
You got to put that there first.
Yes.
Yeah, the hard part is getting into your account.
Don't I know it?
And like I said, any Google account must have a 2FA or MFA enabled.
That's what they do.
Well, I have a bunch of old ones that went back to like 2005, 2006. Actually, even maybe 2004.
I have a client that uses an app password.
I use a YubiKey.
Yep. That's actually a good way. That's secure.
I've been using that Google, the YubiKey for at least 20 plus years.
Well, this is interesting stuff here.
Yeah, but it turns out that you can access, or at least I can, access Google Photos from a web browser. That's the take-home lesson.
Yeah. I ran into a two-factor conundrum just the other day. My cellular carrier, Visible, forced everybody onto two-factor authentication. So in order to log into my account, I have to receive a text message on my phone. Well, I insure my phone through them. What happens to, I haven't asked them this question yet, but I'm going to tomorrow. If I have to receive a text message, they don't have an option for you to set up an authenticator app that you could have independent of your phone. They require that you have your phone. Well, what if my phone is broken or lost? And that's the reason that I'm trying to call them. I can't get in because I can't get my text message on my phone.
Oh, their support number from another phone.
But they don't have a support number. They have text messaging, chat.
Oh.
Well,
You
you
can't
guys,
call
I got
them.
a question for you. The question being, it's giving me a message that I can't read because it's got something laying over the top of it.
Huh.
There's
Move it aside.
I can't. I've tried to.
Hmm.
Try to move the browser around.
Told you, you got to pay that nickel.
Yep.
This could cost me $50 for this one.
You can alt tab and see if that pops it up too. Moves it up forward.
Hmm.
Well, drop in that slot.
Okay, wait. I got around it.
Good.
There you go.
Okay, I don't know how I got around it, but I did. Okay, it's
See, I use ghostery and don't have so many of those issues.
Okay, if you've received Gmail update confirmation email,
Okay,
What?
that's a two-factor authentication that you set up through another mail client to that you have to get the code and type it in.
Yeah, you have to get into your mail client, get the code.
Yeah. This is your first time logging in to this account from a computer window?
no,
But it must have been in a long
Maybe
time.
it might be the first time in a long time.
it might be the
Right.
first time on this machine though.
Yeah,
Ah, well, that means it's his first time for that computer.
Well, yeah,
Email.
but if he had already established two-factor authentication, it wouldn't be walking it through him again.
Right.
Well,
No.
it could be a case where because it's a new machine and he hasn't logged in before, it's challenging him to prove that he is the real owner.
right.
That's
I have
very
that happen.
common. That's very, very
Right.
common now.
Yeah. I have that happen when I move between my various computers and phone.
I get messages from pretty much everybody that I log on to because I use the VPN. You know, my VPN IP address changes every day. And,
Okay, Tom, where are you at?
I'm trying to read
every
all
day,
this
Mike.
instruction, but with you guys talking so much, it's hard to do.
Well, we're passing time while we're waiting for you.
I know you are. I know.
Okay.
I can't decide.
You can always turn off your sound for a while.
Right. Not listen to us. Although we're going to run out of meeting time if you can't figure this out.
Yeah, we may have to move on to something else.
it's
Yeah, move on to something else.
Yeah,
I'll get
'cause-
back.
And while he's doing that, I want to say, is there anything else anyone wants to wrap up with? Last questions, comments, or things that are going on?
nope.
Nope.
I'm going to watch basketball after this, so I'm good.
You're good. All right. And so I think this is our last thing. I will go, how about we can go into announcements, meetings, upcoming meetings. We have tips and tricks, which will be on Tuesday. And then after tips and tricks, what do we got, Tim?
Following week on the following Tuesday, I think is the 16th, is Windows, Office, and AI meeting, formerly of South Suburban. And on Thursday, the 18th, that's the one-time change to the Linux SIG meeting, which otherwise would be just a couple days before Christmas.
Right.
And those who on the 18th expect to see Ed Keating's meeting of Understanding Technology, he doesn't do a December meeting. That's why I use it for the same date for the Linux SIG.
Right. I also like to add, so everybody is aware, there will not be a meeting, Keeping Up with Tech meeting in January because it falls on January 1st.
Big
Holiday.
deal. Your hangover won't last that long.
I won't have a hangover, but I'm not having a meeting that day. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this and leave us open in case Tom finally figures this out.
Recording stopped.